Alright, what's up? Welcome back. Hope everybody's staying blessed. Last night I had a pretty deep conversation with some of the Hebrew Israelite brothers. And for me, I don't really ascribe to that doctrine or that line of thinking, but when I moved away from thinking as a witness would think, I sort of looked at a lot of different belief systems, ideologies, and the Hebrew Israelites was something that caught my attention. And so I did spend a lot of time looking into this doctrine. And anyways, last night in our conversation, we started talking about how the Bible has been used throughout the course of history for good things and for bad things. And lately, I don't know, I've kind of just, maybe I've been sort of uninspired spiritually, but something that I've wanted to talk about for a while is this concept called the Mandela effect and the way that it's showing up in Scripture. And I've always been kind of just waiting for the right time, but this is it. What is the Mandela effect? I'm sure that most people have heard of it. This is the idea of our reality being manipulated. Some people will call this the idea of false memory. So one group of people has a memory of something happening one way, another group of people has it happening another way. And this started, the phrase was coined by somebody named Fiona Bloom in '09, and it was in regards to the death of Nelson Mandela. Some people believe that Nelson Mandela died years back when he was in prison. And then there's a whole other group of people that believe that he died recently. Like me, I remember him dying recently, but I know of people who without fail remember him dying years and years ago. So this is the main example and where the name Mandela effect came from. But there's all kinds of examples throughout society in TV shows, in different things. For example, Star Wars is probably the biggest example that most people would remember. Most people remember C-3PO being all gold. Now if you go back, he's got a silver leg, which is something most people don't recall. The Monopoly guy. Most people recall the Monopoly guy having a monocle. I do. I played Monopoly my whole life. Not anymore. Doesn't have a monocle. Back to Star Wars. The most famous line in the movie, Luke, I am your father. Wrong. Actually, when you go back now and you check it out, it says, no, I am your father. So the question comes up, what's going on? Is it them or is it us? Is it supernatural, or is there an explanation to this? Is it false memory? When we talk about false memory, we see this in crimes. A bunch of people see a shooting. 3 of them remember the shooter wearing a brown jacket and he had a blue hat. The other 3 people remember the shooter having a blue jacket and a brown hat. This is the way that I look at something that we would call false memories. The Mandela effect, in my opinion, is different. In my opinion, the Mandela effect is indeed something that we would refer to as supernatural. So, back to the conversation that I was having with the Hebrews last night, where I'm interested in looking at this whole Mandela effect thing, because indeed our reality is changing, but I'm interested in looking at it in the Bible, because indeed the Mandela effect is changing the Bible. Now, our reality can be played with when we all exist inside of a certain framework. And I'll give you an example. Anybody who's ever seen the TV show Seinfeld would remember the episode of the Bubble Boy. And they tried to show us something in this episode. They were really showing us the way our reality can be played with when we live inside a bubble. George gets into it with this Bubble Boy because they're playing a game of Trivial Pursuit. The Bubble Boy lives in a bubble. Anybody who's seen it knows. And the question in Trivial Pursuit comes up, who dominated Europe, or who ruled Europe throughout the Middle Ages? The Moors or the Moops? And of course the Bubble Boy swears it was the Moops. But of course, historically speaking, we know it was the Moors, the Blackamoors. And the end of the episode ends up they get in a big fight and the bubble pops. But they're trying to show you that he was popping the bubble of that kid's reality with the truth. That's what they're really trying to show you in this episode. 99% of the population would not see it that way, but as we go deeper into this Mandela effect, I think you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, in Scripture, in the Bible, where are we seeing this? Well, I'm just going to show just a few little spots in the Bible where, without a doubt, things have changed. Now, this is the first book I've read and the last book that I've read. And I've had this Bible here. This is a King James Bible for at least 12 years. When I talk about the first book, I've had many, many Bibles, but this one I've leaned on this one. I grew up with the New World Translation. When we talk about the Mandela effect in the Bible, I think it's important to establish some versions of the Bible, like the New World Translation, have been manipulated. Just straight up manipulated. This isn't a supernatural thing. This is a case where certain people just remove certain scriptures. And that's happened with many Bibles. But what I'm about to show you here, this is not done by the hands of men, at least not directly. So let's look at the first one. The first one is in Matthew. Now this is dealing with when Jesus is born, and here we go. Okay, it's Matthew 2:11, and it says, "And when they were coming into the house, they saw the young child and Mary his mother, and fell down and worshipped him," and yada yada yada. But this is where we got a problem, right in the first line. And when they come into the house. It was never a house originally. Jesus was born in a manger, according to the scriptures originally. So this scripture here, Matthew 2:11, something's changed. From when I was reading it as a child, growing up reading this scripture, to reading it right now, something has changed. Let's look at another one. The other one that I wanted to point out was, well, let's just look at the one that there's no arguing about. Because I don't care who you are, you grew up remembering this scripture the way that I grew up remembering this scripture. This one is Isaiah 11:6. So it says, "The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them." So, huge problem right off the bat, because the wolf never laid down with the lamb. As we all remember, the lion laid down with the lamb. We have songs of this, we have paintings of this all through history. The lion and the lamb, the lion and the lamb. So those are just a couple examples, direct examples, that I wanted to show where we see something has changed the scriptures. So what is it? What's changing the scriptures? Well, there's a lot of thinking that goes around that says that right now our reality is malleable. So what does that mean, malleable? Meaning it can be played with, it can be manipulated. I'm sure many people have heard of something called CERN, a supercomputer in CERN, Switzerland, and the concept of this computer is smashing particles. Huge computer. It takes up like a whole part of a town. And the reason they're smashing these particles is to try to break the fabric of reality, to be able to play with the fabric of reality. So this is deep stuff, and take it how you'll take it. But now I want to look at this a little bit differently. Because although right now I believe that yes, with CERN, supernaturally, things in our reality, in the scriptures, in media, are changing, I think that this type of manipulation has been happening for a long time. And one of the things that we were talking about last night is the way the Bible has been used and the way it's been changed, to suit different agendas. For example, most people would not know, and many people may not want to believe it, but the truth of the matter is the King James Bible is a slave document. I'm going to say it again. The King James Bible is a slave document. Before the King James Bible was ever put together by King James and Francis Bacon and all his people and his sorcerers and his scribes, the Bible was in Latin. And the Bible was used by the Latin countries as they moved forward with their most profitable endeavor, which is slavery. So this is Spain, Portugal. But now King James wants in on the action. And so he has his own rendition of the Bible done up. And he proceeds to launch England into the slave trade. Now, let's look at something in the scriptures that was used to manipulate many, many people. We go to Ephesians. Ephesians 5 and 6. I believe it is. Ephesians 5 and 6. No, Ephesians 6 and 5. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. So, this scripture would likely have been a source of comfort for my ancestors. Or if you had ancestors that were tied up in slavery at some point, they would have looked at this scripture telling you to be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling. Tremble. This scripture would have been a source of comfort for people on slave plantations that were given this book on Sundays in order to justify what was going on in their lives. And it would have been a source of comfort, because it still is a source of comfort for many of the descendants of these people. But it's important to point out, this is a manipulation. This scripture is used and has been used in order to fulfill somebody's agenda. And the biggest, most just fraudulent, scam-worthy example of this in the scriptures has to be Romans chapter 13. I'm not going to read it, because I think that you should read it. Anybody who has a Bible should turn to Romans 13 and read the whole chapter. Meditate on that chapter. Tap into that chapter. See what they're really talking about in that chapter. And again, we realize this chapter is used to fulfill an agenda. It was even mentioned by Jeff Sessions when he was talking about the immigration problem in the States, telling them that they need to obey the law, just like it says in Romans 13. So, when we look at this book, we have to be honest about how it's been used. And even before King James took it and gave us the King James Bible here, before that we have to look at, how is this Bible used? Why was the book of Enoch taken out of the Bible? Why was the book of the books, because there's more than one, the books of the Maccabees taken out of the Bible? Why were the Gospels of Thomas removed? Because in certain Bibles, the Nag Hammadi scriptures, we have all these books. Some of the oldest Bibles in the world are out of Ethiopia, and they have all these books. So when we talk about the Bible, the Latin Bible that came through the Roman Catholic Church, and when we talk about the historicity of it and the way that it's used to control history, we got to look at a few different characters. Well, let's start with a man called Josephus. Josephus, his scholarship is used to verify the historicity of most all of the so-called Greek scriptures. He is the scholar relied upon. Now, the interesting thing about Josephus is that Josephus was a Hebrew fighting the Romans. But as time went along, for some reason, he changed teams. And he changed teams so hard, he walked away from his Hebrew people so hard and indentured himself to the Romans so hard that he became known as Flavius Josephus, after the Flavian Roman dynasty that was doing all the damage at the time. So right from the jump, we gotta ask, whoa, what's up? Because that's what I would call a traitor. So we have an apparent traitor who is used as the the most trustworthy source. I mean, we all know every time we've been sitting in church or the Kingdom Hall or whatever, they always brought up, oh, Josephus said this, Josephus said that. Well, should we be trusting this man? Should we be? Right? So, right from the jump, the manipulation has taken place. But now let's jump forward a couple years. So Josephus is right happening around the time that Jerusalem's destroyed, 70 AD. Now let's jump up like 1,000 years. Let's go to like 1200 of our common era. We have someone named Remundus Martini. Who's Remundus Martini? Remundus is a Spanish monk. What is Remundus doing? Remundus's job is basically to take the Hebrew literature, the ancient Hebrew documents, and revise them and bring fresh ideas to the public. Now, at the same time, there was an excommunication of the Hebrew peoples happening between 1200 to 1492, when it was officially Hebrews are out of Spain and Portugal. This is all taking place. And so during this time, he is one of the foundational people in manipulating doctrine. And one of the big doctrines that he manipulated is the name Jehovah. Remundus Martini is one of the main reasons why we have this name, Jehovah. He's one of the main minds behind taking something, YHVH, the original Hebrew pronunciations, and looking at this name and anglicizing it, changing it with the hook, or should I say with the J. So, different food for thought when we talk about the manipulation of the scriptures. Going back to the Mandela effect, I think we have to take a new look at our reality. There is a physicist, very famous physicist named James Gates. James Gates, he figured out something pretty amazing. He figured out, and this is sort of what the Matrix movie is based off of, he figured out that our reality, it fits into a certain type of computer code. There's literally a computer code that our reality is drawn with, and the right line of thinking, the right kind of code breaking, would be able to crack and manipulate this computer code of our reality in order to change our reality. And I think that we are definitely seeing this as this 5G technology comes through, as things like supercomputers like CERN are in full operation and few people know what the hell's going on. We need to be aware of this manipulation because it's happening on a categorical, on an amazing level, on a huge level. And I think it's important to pay attention to what's going on with this book and what has gone on with this book, because many, many people rely on this book as the proverbial bubble that they live in. And I believe that certain things about that bubble are being popped. So this is what it is for today. It's been a little bit of a delay. I had to just take some deep breaths off of the videos for a little while, but I'm coming hard and heavy. Peace and love to everybody. Like, subscribe. Drinking Gourds out. Peace.